So, what's with this cocktail guy anyway? He says I saved his life, which I'm not even sure I did, and my reward is dinner and dancing at Taco Bell. I mean, hey, I like Mexican food, but come on.
Now all restaurants are Taco Bell.
No way.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I haven't had Doug Ernst on the channel in a long time, so I wanted to say welcome back, Doug. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, man? Great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I haven't had you on since you had the big news. You just decided to go up and quit the media? Just becoming your self-employed man, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't take it anymore. I got a new boss and my coworker who I worked with for like a decade. They both left, and I got a new boss who wanted to micromanage me, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my soul. Yeah, I'll do my Soul Finder books, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so well, congratulations. It's a wonderful feeling where you're no longer under the thumb of other people. It's nice being retired.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to tell a boss in a tactful way, see you later, sucker.
Well, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more than just your creative choice or your career choices. We've had a lot of things happening within comic books and just within entertainment in general, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. We've talked, generally speaking, I said this is kind of what we're going to talk about, but we haven't really talked in depth about any of this stuff. But I remember, I think about 4 years ago, you've always been more of a Marvel guy, but you kind of gave up Marvel Comics because you didn't like the direction that it was going, and you found a viable alternative over at DC. I think you went over there to the Superman books and whatnot, and it was nice when you've got that alternative. But it feels like more and more, just comic books specifically, but entertainment in general, it feels like they're shutting down alternatives. Everything is essentially telling the exact same story using different characters or whatever, but all these platforms are essentially being pushed in the exact same direction.
Yeah, I had never really been a DC guy my entire life. I grew up with Marvel, and then Super Sons came out, and for whatever reason, I don't know, cover caught my eye, or maybe the guy behind the counter said, hey, you might want to check this out, this is good. So I was like, okay, I'd check it out, and I just was hooked. I was like, whoa, this is great. And it felt like at some point in time DC was like, uh-oh, people like this book, we got to take care of that. We can't have people liking a book that's just fun. And then they killed it off, and I was like, what the? And then I think it was probably watching one of your videos when they were like, they're bringing Bendis over, and then I was like, I'm out. I know this is gonna go badly, because I had read what the Riri Williams stuff, what he did with Iron Man and all of that. I'm like, he's going to bring that over to DC. No. And then again, people could watch all of your videos and what Bendis did. Everything that people predicted came to pass.
Yeah, it's crazy, because if you look at the time when Super Sons comes out, that's Peter J. Tomasi's writing that. He was also the primary writer on Superman, and it was a really cool take on the character. Obviously, he'd become a father, and you're really getting to see this wonderful relationship between Clark and his young son John. They went to there's like an episode where they go to the town fair, maybe the county fair or whatever. It's like real old school kind of Americana feel to it. They go on a road trip across America, right. And he's showing them all the monuments across America and what they meant in history and all these things. And you wouldn't find anything like that over at Marvel Comics. And obviously they did bring Bendis over for a reason, and that we kind of predicted it was kind of to destroy Superman, destroy the family, something that Dan Didio's said that he wanted to do in the past. We've seen the whiteboard and everything, but he was kind of just the gateway drug, and it feels like Tom Taylor is the coup de grace, the writer they brought in here to do the finishing blows. Jettison Clark Kent off to another planet because nobody would really accept him, pushing the social and political views that his son John, the new Superman, is on Earth. And boom, you got no alternatives. You can't go to Marvel and read a Captain America comic because he just basically buried the American dream. We just came off the Ta-Nehisi Coates Captain America run, where he was essentially given up on America, and had given up on the idea of what America could be. That was only compounded by the United States Captain America. You're seeing just the player levels between DC and Marvel, and the characters that are kind of similar, and the way that they're taking them down. It's like Is there a playbook?
Yeah, it seems like there's a narrow band of political thought that you could operate within, and they have this idea of what the ideal character would be. I mean, you were talking about other industries. I think the Ghostbusters, the all-female Ghostbusters in 2016, losing track of time, but that was like a perfect example where they want all women to sort of be like Kirsten Wiig or Melissa McCarthy or whatever her name is, Leslie Jones, or like some amalgamation of them together where they're sassy. They have these non sequiturs that are like randomly bashing men, and they have the left-wing talking points of the day. And I would say, like, it seems like for every 10 books that are like weirdo activist stuff, like you might get one that is sort of innocuous these days. But even then, the writer is constrained by the cultural atmosphere within the industry where certain subjects are like a third rail. So you're limited in what you can do, even if you aren't really that political of a person, because the editors are just going to be like, nope, sorry, can't say that, can't cover that, can't cover that. And so what do you do?
Yeah, it's crazy. You think about like DC recently had their Superman 78 book and their Batman 89. Those properties obviously happen in completely different time frames than what we are now. Almost different Americas. It's 78 and Batman 89. And in the book, the Superman 78 book, to its credit, it feels like it's right out of the Christopher Reeves, Richard Donner era of Superman. The dialogue feels right. The tone of the adventure, the city looks right. But if you go over to that Batman 89 book, specifically in issue number 2, and everything, all the things that are happening in the background of Two-Face, the Billy D. Williams version of that character becoming Two-Face, all the things that are happening peripherally around the character and that are happening in the background of the story are ripped right out of modern headlines. Right. It's crazy with the cities getting burnt out, and we've got police, shooting non-white characters and stuff like that. It's like Batman 89 feels like the one guarantee besides Superman 78 where you can go into something, and this stuff it wouldn't even feel at home here, but they still couldn't help themselves but to include that kind of narrative and that kind of agenda within a book like that.
Yeah, I feel like every once in a while they're in this weird position where they want to be one thing, they want to just do this activist sort of thing, but they know that financially, like they try and throw you a bone every once in a while to just keep you, not you, but like just people like myself or you or like whatever, like, like, oh no, you could still have faith in us. There's still something out there for you. But overall, this sort of mentality has seeped into the industry so much that it's in everything. And I would even say on some level, the industry has been trained like a Pavlovian dog by the bigger media outlets.
By the media, absolutely.
Because there's a positive reinforcement thing that goes on where it's like, oh, you make this character LGBTQ plus activist, you're going to get a cable news story. You're going to get on Access Hollywood. You're going to get Hollywood Reporter and just go down the list. Variety stories, blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, we're going to ignore you completely. So these creators, they're like, they become like the monkey with the symbols or something along those lines, or some sort of like trained,
a dog waiting for its treat.
Yeah, Labrador, poodle, whatever. Yeah. And I'm thinking, even if you are more of an activist, if you have any dignity, you don't want to be somebody else's puppet. And it's like, how do you feel that you have become a puppet or a trained monkey with symbols? Like, I would be embarrassed about that. I know people have to pay their bills, but at the same time, it's like, it feels greasy. It's sad.
Like, you think about Superman, it's one of the most iconic characters, obviously in American culture, pop culture, but really it's one of the most recognizable characters and symbols across the world. Obviously, they got to change the logo, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. They have to make his son, John Kent, is now an LGBTQ representative character. And before that, they brought in Ta-Nehisi Coates, who had such a poor representation and run on Captain America. It actually drove sales below a threshold that had never been really hit before on the Captain America series. They bring him in to write the Superman movie for the J.J. Abrams reboot within the DC universe. And the only reason they got headlines for that was because they confirmed that the new Superman would be black. So the only time we've heard about Superman in mainstream media within the last 4 or 5 years are when they're changing the race of the character to black in the movies. Right. When the son, that is the new Superman in the comic books, has become an LGBTQ representative character. And then when Superman himself, or when they take the motto, Truth, Justice, in the American Way, away from the character and rename it Truth, Justice in a Better Tomorrow or a Better World. I can't remember which one exactly it is. But you're right. The only incentive they want, if they want to get any type of publicity or any type of write-up or mainstream coverage, is they have to hit one of these approved topics with the character. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good your Superman story is, it will largely go completely, ignored through the mainstream media. And a lot of these people are looking to catapult themselves into movie and streaming and whatever. And you're right, they are completely incentivized to make all these changes with the characters, or otherwise they will never get noticed.
Yeah, and another problem, people will say like, "Oh, Doug, you're biased because you're a right-leaning guy or whatever." I will actually take on another problem with all of this is actually right-leaning cable news outlets. If you look at a lot of them, when they talk, they will do the same thing. They will latch onto the, suddenly gay Superman or whatever. But then they will not interview people that like a Brett R. Smith or somebody that is actually worked in the industry, actually worked on Superman books. Dean, even like a Dean Cain. But a lot of times it'll just be like a conservative pundit interviews another conservative pundit about the comic book industry. And so you only get this sort of complaining rhetoric. You don't actually get anything of substance.
It's all surface level information. There's no actual context built around it.
Right. That would actually move the ball forward. And so, but that also helps the industry, because a lot of times any coverage, any news is good news, especially if it's just a bunch of people screaming about
controversy and outrage. Yes, that's what draws the views on 24-hour news coverage. That's what draws the views on these websites that are all clickbait, and what draws the eyes even on social media.
Right. And so there was the other thing is when this story broke, and I just said, you know what, this is boring and predictable. Someone's like, why do you have a problem with LGBT, John Kent? And I didn't respond to it. But I wanted to be like, I said it was boring and predictable. And when Super Sons was torpedoed, and Bendis was coming over, people basically were joking that this is exactly what they would do. It happens. Ipso facto, boring, predictable. It was exactly what everybody said. You know what they're going to do years in advance now with a lot of these characters.
Yeah, it's crazy. No one's talked about Tim Drake being an important character for how many long. You do this rapid kind of a sexuality change of the character. Finally, he's big headline news. People are talking about Tim Drake, but you know what the problem is, Doug? Well, at least John Kent's in a comic book. Since that's happened, Tim Drake's been persona non grata. I think he's made a couple appearances here and there, but he's not a main figure in any book. We were told that he was going to be one of the main central focuses of Fear State, which is the big Batman event going on. I think we saw him show up one time at the very end of an anthology book. These characters, once they get the headline, they don't know what to do with them, and They get summarily discarded and put by the wayside in another pile of LGBTQ representative characters that they don't know what to do with.
Yeah, and it's weird because... So this might be another topic altogether, but to me, when I see these activists online or actually in the industry, I think like, whatever happened to fraternal love? Anytime you have two men or two women that are just friends, like you have these activist people are like, that's because they're LGBTQ or whatever, and like they start writing. I saw the Supergirl show.
Yeah.
Last night in my Twitter feed, it was showing up. People were just like, Supergirl's gay or a lesbian or whatever. And it was just like, I don't watch that show or whatever, but it was just like, you cannot just have a fraternal relationship with someone. You can't have camaraderie. They always got to twist it into like, what if they were making out? And you're like, this is not creative. This is just you playing out some bizarre fantasy.
Yeah, some weird fan fiction. It's weirder than that, Doug. When you talk about some like the shipping kind of stuff that unfortunately spilled over from Tumblr once they put a crackdown on there. Have you ever watched? I think it's called Supernatural.
I have not watched that. No.
Well, it stars two brothers, and if you type those brothers in, like one of the first images, it's like they're shipping brothers now. It's like, what is this? Who thinks of stuff like this?
Yeah, so that's where I just think you have a lot of these activists, a lot of people that they don't care about the characters. They don't care about the history. Yeah. They don't care about virtue, integrity, values. They just want to do what they want to do.
They care about the platform and the ability to push agendas using other people's works.
Right. And it's about not so much having heroes be heroes, but let's just do weird stuff to people and let's see what gets a reaction out of people. What if two brothers went at it?
And you're just edgelord kind of behavior.
Okay, dude, like whatever. I won't be watching that, but
it's weird. The Winchester brothers, it's a brother relationship. There's no indication that there's any type of weirdness going on between the two. Yet, obviously there's a little community that thinks that it should be that way. It's just like, it's really strange. You also, get that with Venom, like Venom and Eddie Brock are in a relationship. They love each other. It's like,
yeah, was it the director that said something along those lines?
No, this has been going on. Like Donny Cates got it really bad when he told the shipper, he's like, I'm not putting that into my comic book. They kind of wanted to cancel him. But I do believe the recent director of that film kind of went in there and said they were in some type of weird relationship.
Yeah, so
it's not even a human. It's like a parasite.
No, so now parasitic relationships are actually akin to romantic relationships or something along those lines. But yeah, and when someone like yourself or me says like, hey, this is kind of weird, people are like, whoa, sounds like you got a problem. And it's like, yeah. I do have a problem, just not the problem that you are diagnosing me with. It's really just bad writing that I have a problem with.
Well, there's certain people that are so unimaginative, and I don't think they can come up and vocalize their opposition to what I'm saying, their retort to the points that I'm making. So it's always the lowest common denominator, and they know that it's effective. They just go, well, you're a bigot. You are a homophobe. You're this phobe. You're that phobe. And they don't know what to do if it doesn't affect you, because you can call me all the names in the world. If you don't back it up with something, I just assume that you just wanted to say something and you have nothing else to contribute to the conversation, and you're gone. It's like, whatever. Anyone can say whatever they want. It takes somebody to actually articulate themselves and know why I'm wrong. Now, I can have my own opinions and we can disagree, but so many people just jump to the name calling because they have no idea actually how to defend their position or go against the position that I have on a lot of these cases.
Yeah, and people could say whatever they want about you, but I've watched your channel enough and I know you enough to know that you deeply care about these characters and their history, particularly the ones that have become iconic. And the idea that any sort of criticism of what they're doing to these characters is tantamount to just being like a bad person and a bigot. It's just kind of embarrassing to me, but at the same time, speaking about predictable things, predictable with many social media platforms.
Yeah, because if you look at the stuff that I've covered as far as the deconstruction of characters, I called out when they destroyed Wally West. They didn't do a race swap on him. They didn't do an LGBTQ relationship with that character. They made him a mass murderer. That didn't fit in with the character, and I called that out, and I said that was BS. The thing that Tom King did with Mr. Terrific, where he basically was telling another character that I was happy when my pregnant wife died because I never wanted to be a father. That doesn't fit in with the history and the character of Mr. Terrific. It had nothing to do with these other things, but people definitely get offended when they start making these other changes to the character, and then I go and I articulate that out. But I've been clear on these things. When you go out and you start ruining other people's work, I'm going to call it out.
And I feel like a lot of these writers and artists, they know it deep down, but they're almost like the industry Judases. But instead of 30 pieces of silver, it's like $300 and a Subway gift certificate that you will sell out
of fame,
Superman.
Yeah. Get an interview on CNN or something.
Right. It's just like, yeah, if I just say the right thing, Don Lemon might interview me. or maybe Sean Hannity to just go off on me, because either way, I'm on cable news. I'm a star now.
Yeah, it's so strange. And obviously, the character that's more near and dear to your heart would be a Captain America. We haven't seen a true representation or a good Captain America story in like 10 years now. One of the most
I checked
iconic-
out of Cap a while ago, where it's like, oh well, we're just gonna make him an old man for a little while. We're gonna make him Hydra Cap for a while, and or we're just gonna make him almost a background character in his own book, or he's going to be going after X, Y, and Z hate group. He's done that 10,000 times, but we're just going to do it again because we have no ideas. Again, going back to that, there's a very narrow band of thought that you are allowed to write these characters in. And so therefore the stories you have a narrow band of stories that you could actually tell. And then they just it's like the record on a loop. They just keep going back to the same song over and over again.
Yeah, it's so insane when you see these things that Marvel has done previously, where they basically swapped out all the main characters when they were the hottest they could have ever been. They're all in the Avengers and everything. They, got to do gender, race, and character, sexuality swaps on all these characters. DC's essentially just done that.
Right.
And it's because there is no viable alternative anymore. You will consume what they tell you have to consume. And if you find alternatives, they will be shut down and they will be brought in line within the status quo of what Hollywood, in our case, comic books are willing to provide you.
Yeah, no, like you said, there is nowhere to go, but that is why I've always sort of been, not always, but over the last decade, gravitating towards indie comics, and just anybody, indie film creators, whatnot, or the very few film, like the directors who operate on their own terms, like a Christopher Nolan, who has enough influence and power because he's just so talented that a studio will be like, okay, do what you want. We're just gonna let you do whatever, whatever. So I sort of go towards those sorts of individuals.
Yeah, you just kind of give up the mainstream. And the weirdest thing is you go out and support some of these franchises or movies. I remember when, what was it, Battle Angel Alita? I think it was just Battle Angel, right? When that film came out, you weren't allowed to praise it or say good things about it because it wasn't quite in line with what Hollywood was pushing at the time. You were supposed to like Captain Marvel, and you couldn't even say a good thing about that film without them trying to project some kind of weird statement on you about that.
Yeah, they politicized Alita Battle Angel. It was the weirdest thing because any sort of praise for what Robert Rodriguez and all of them did with that movie was seen as an attack on Captain Marvel. And then eventually that was at the same time that Rotten Tomatoes literally changed the algorithm, and they were messing around where, the reviews for Captain Marvel, and then YouTube actually changed its algorithm. And my channel, so there was like an Alita Battle Angel video, or there's like two of them I did, and they exploded. So we'll just say like they got like over 100,000 views. For the size of my channel, that's a lot. So, and then overnight, boom, you did an Alita Battle Angel video, you'd be lucky if you get 1,000 views on there because they just cut you off from whatever stream that initially you had access to. And they were like, no. And same thing with Captain Marvel. The first couple Captain Marvel videos, tens of thousands of views. This is back in the day. And then boom, somebody flipped a switch, changed the algorithm. And yeah, you're lucky if you get 500 views on a Captain Marvel video at the time. So that shows you just how much that the industry, the Silicon Valley, they want to put the thumb on the scale to make sure that you only operate under certain conditions.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're seeing it right now with this. I think it's Ghostbusters Afterlife. Being enthusiastic about that film is somehow a political statement in opposition of Ghostbusters 2016, which I think is an awful movie. Ghostbusters Answered the Call, whatever you want to call it. That was a terrible movie. It wasn't because it was fronted by 4 females. It was a terrible movie because it wasn't funny. The story wasn't good. It wasn't entertaining. Now, it looks like this other Ghostbuster movie might be more in keeping with the original films that were worldwide phenomenons, and just going out there and say I'm exciting for that makes you a bigot and in opposition of the other film, which means that you didn't like it only because it was led by females. It couldn't have been that it was a bad film. It's the way this stuff works now. It's just so crazy to deal with.
Yeah, and with the 2016 Ghostbusters, I've always said the actresses in the film, you can tell that they were 110% into the roles and they gave it their all. The script was bad and the directing was bad. And it was so bad that there was a scene with like a Michael Jackson Thriller dance number where there was like a quarter of it still in the film, but it was not explained why it was in the film. Yeah. And so it's like your editing, your directing, and your script were all bad. You gave it to these actresses and they did their best, but it's bad. But instead of talking about bad writing, again, they just find a way to twist it into, no, you actually just don't like Melissa McCarthy or Kristen Wiig or Leslie Jones. And it's like, nah, I don't have a problem with them.
It's a weird version of censorship. It's all like silencing through shaming. The only reason you could believe this is because of this. The only reason you believe that was because of this. And it's always got to be the worst motives in the world. It could never be because it just wasn't something I was interested in, or I checked it out. I thought it looked good, but it just wasn't to my taste. And the only reason you could like this is because the worst reason in the world. It must be because you're alt-right or something, rather than, well, it's an interesting movie. It's got a character I like, starring somebody I'm interested in. But they always give you these terrible motives. They try to like just shame you from enjoying anything about entertainment nowadays.
Yeah, and there's really no room for a conversation once people start playing Professor X with what's going on in your head and assigning like the worst motives. Even if you're telling them like, no, I really didn't like, the script was bad and the editing and the direction was bad. And they're like, you're lying. I know what you're really thinking. And you're like, I'm literally not lying. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. And they're just like, no, I know what's really in your head. And you're like, all right, well, see you later. Like, we're done here. There's nothing left for me to say.
Yeah, it's just it's nuts. And then obviously people are trying to create alternatives to the mainstream, and it's very difficult. Obviously, these things take a lot of money, but you're really at the mercy of big tech right now. If Google or none of these big platforms doesn't want you to be able to get your word out there, or your message out there, they can literally shut anybody down.
Yeah, if you have a project that they don't like you, they could just, make sure that in the search results, you're not going to come up until, page 10 or whatever it is. So there's all sorts of little shady games that they can play, and you're not privy to the inside information about how the algorithms work and all of that. So they can just be like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe you just don't have very good content there, Wes. Yeah. If you did, you'd have 1 million subscribers right now.
You want to make an alternative to YouTube? You can't use servers anymore.
Right.
Okay, yeah. That's going to be a big impediment. Oh, you want to create a platform where people can go out there and support their favorite creators independent of whatever, and just directly support them? You can't do money transactions anymore.
Yeah, they'll always find like some route that they can take you out at. If you, like you said, it's like if I start trying to make my own platform and then you go to MasterCard and Visa, and you convince them that I'm the worst person in the world, and they cut me off from my finances, it's like, well, I can't make my platform because you just kneecapped me before I even got started. So here we are.
It feels like we're living in Demolition Man, where everything is Taco Bell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's a few people that are like Dennis Leary, who
eating rat burgers in the south.
Yeah, are eating rat burgers and proud of it.
Yeah, it's so It's so strange how a lot of entertainment has actually been quite predictive of kind of where we're at. And you watched Demolition Man as a kid. I imagine we were probably about the same age. It's like, oh, that's really strange. Then you get there, like, oh, I can see how we're going there. Interesting.
Yeah, the people in the robes, the elites or whatever, who are just passing down orders, and then everybody goes along with it. And even the little anything you say, like Sylvester Stallone, every time he says the wrong word or he says an expletive or whatever, he gets fined for it. Essentially, it might not be swearing on Twitter, but if you say the wrong thing, they have the hall monitors on YouTube and Twitter and all of these places that'll make sure that you are penalized for it.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the 3 seashells and the weird helmet thing that replaces sex. And we'll be there, right?
Demolition Man has definitely aged well in terms of the messaging that it warned about.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. So I do want to say thank you very much to Doug for joining me today, kind of talking about some of the issues where, there aren't going to be many alternatives moving forward. We've talked about it, also in the past, that you need to start collecting physical media of the things that you love, because they're all going to be censored and changed to kind of fall in line with what you're allowed to present in entertainment moving forward. Do you have any final words or things that you wanted to talk about, Doug, before we wrap this up?
Well, as usual, I just want to thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And if people are looking for an alternative, the Soul Finder books are available at iconicomics.com, along with, I know you speak with Timothy Lim on a regular basis. So Tim's books are all of there. Matt Weldon's books, stuff by Brett R. Smith and Bill Williams. Eric Canetti, I know you talk with Eric as well. Eric's there, and Alejandro Mirabal. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, but it's not going to be covered by CNN, and it's not going to be getting highlighted on the Hollywood Reporter. But that is at least an outlet where people can go for books that aren't necessarily trying to beat them over the head and say that they're a bad person if you don't agree with us.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Doug. I really appreciate the time.
Cool. See ya.